a boat in the sea, and an incoming missile. This video was shared with the world by President Trump. He said the US destroyed a Venezuelan boat ferrying drugs to America. 6 people were killed. Donald Trump calls them narco-terrorists. Now he's been astonishingly open about the CIA's usually highly secret potential plans in Venezuela. In the Oval Office, he confirmed he has authorized the Central Intelligence Agency to conduct covert operations in the South American country.
I authorized for 2 reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America. They came in through the border. They came in because we had an open border policy. And as soon as I heard that, I said, a lot of these countries, they're not the only country, but they're the worst abuser. And they've allowed thousands and thousands of prisoners, mental institution, people from mental institutions, insane asylums, emptied out into the United States. We're bringing them back. But that's a really bad, and they did it at a level that probably not, many countries have done it, but not like Venezuela. They were down and dirty. And the other thing are drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela. And a lot of the Venezuelan drugs come in through the sea, so you get to see that. But we're going to stop them by land also.
Venezuela is by no means the biggest exporter of illicit drugs in South America, and the claim it's sending prisoners to the US is widely disputed. Since September, the US has attacked at least 5 boats in the Caribbean. The administration says it's in armed conflict with drug cartels. UN-appointed human rights experts say the strikes are extrajudicial executions.
No war, just peace.
Even as Venezuela denies the boats were carrying drugs, the president himself, Nicolas Maduro, has been accused by some American officials of being part of a drug trafficking network. He denies that and suggests the US wants regime change.
We remember the coups against Argentina, the coup by Pinochet, and the 5,000 young people assassinated and disappeared. How long will CIA coups continue? Latin America does not want them, does not need them, and repudiates them.
The CIA has a long and controversial record in South America, carrying out operations in several countries, including Chile. It's admitted that during the coup of 1973, it actively supported the military junta which took over, leading to the rise of Augusto Pinochet, whose dictatorship saw human rights abuses, forced disappearances, and mass executions. Nicolas Maduro is widely accused of having stolen elections last year, but the US really doesn't like the Venezuelan president. It says he's an indicted drug trafficker and has put up a $50 million reward for information leading to his arrest and/or conviction. In response to the escalating tensions, Nicolas Maduro has put the army on the streets of the capital, Caracas, and the surrounding area. The government says to coordinate defense. The military has also been giving civilians weapons training. This woman is being shown the ropes of an anti-aircraft machine. They've been told the US wants a change of president because it wants their oil and other resources. What Donald Trump's game plan in the Caribbean is unclear. Asked if the CIA has been given authority to remove Nicolas Maduro, he didn't deny it.
Does the CIA have authority to take out Maduro?
Oh, I don't want to answer a question like that. That's a ridiculous question for me to be given. Not really a ridiculous question, but wouldn't it be a ridiculous question for me to answer? But I think Venezuela's feeling heat.
The US strikes have handed Nicolas Maduro the opportunity to put on a show of strength. If Donald Trump goes no further, could he just have helped the leader of Venezuela stay in power?
Phil Gunson is an analyst based in Caracas for the Crisis Group and joins me now. What do you think is Donald Trump's ambition here?
Well, I think there are a number of different objectives that are combined in this massive operation that began a couple of months ago. I mean, one clearly is striking in some way at the drug trafficking cartels. Another is the potential removal of President Nicolas Maduro from power, regime change in Venezuela. But I think what part of the problem with the whole operation is that these things are kind of contradictory. And I think where we're at now is that we really don't know either where this is going, where it's going to end, what's the point at which they might declare victory and sail away. or indeed ultimately, what exactly is this all about?
Do you think that the drugs issue is a proxy then? Because there are worse offenders in South America for trafficking drugs than Venezuela.
That's certainly true. And I think the people who are keen to blow things up in Venezuela are even keener to blow them up in Mexico, for example. But it's much more complicated. I mean, the relationship between Mexico and the United States, the popularity of President Sheinbaum in Mexico. I mean, the thing about Venezuela, of course, is that it's an easy target in the sense that Nicolas Maduro is a very unpopular president, both at home and abroad, and nobody's going to go into bat, so to speak, for drug traffickers. So in a way, I think what they're doing here is they're trying out this approach to drug trafficking, which I think won't work. I think it's a very bad idea of blowing up the traffickers in transit in the hope that that will somehow cure the problem. I don't think it will.
It appears strange that Donald Trump would advertise what are supposed to be covert operations by the CIA.
If you're going to carry out, if you're going to wage covert warfare, as they seem to be suggesting yesterday, the definition of covert warfare is that it's secret. If you announce it in advance, it makes it look as if you're really not intending to do it. And I think what we have to, the way we have to interpret not only the announcement yesterday about the CIA, the supposedly secret finding, which they immediately announced, the deployment of B-52 bombers very close to Venezuela, it's all psychological warfare. What they're attempting to do is to convince Maduro that if he doesn't leave, then they're coming in after him. And I think Maduro can read this just as well as you and I. And he is still counting on this being a bluff, and he believes he can call it.
And you mentioned that the president is unpopular at home. So do you think that the US is perhaps trying to stoke protest? Do you think that would work?
I think that would be completely unrealistic. The Venezuelan government, particularly since it lost the presidential election in the middle of last year and refused to accept the result, it's very repressive. People are scared to go out on the streets. The opposition leadership is in hiding, at least the hardline leadership. And I don't think protests are going to happen. I think perhaps they might imagine that the military are going to split, that the government will collapse, that they'll throw Maduro out because he's clearly a liability. I think that's also rather a long shot. In fact, I think they're unrealistic in general in terms of, the conditions here on the ground.
And what is the feeling on the ground about this escalation in tensions?
Well, it's a mixture. Some people, of course, are welcoming it. Some people want anything at all that will get rid of Maduro. Other people, the other end of the political spectrum, people are very scared. Even people quite low down in the pecking order on the Chavista, on the government side, because they fear not only that they would, if there was regime change, they would lose their jobs. That there might be revenge attacks, all sorts of things. And in the middle, I think a lot of people, perhaps the bulk of the population, just confused.
Where do you think this goes next?
I think if we're talking about scenarios, the one I would put my money on is that Nicolas Maduro stays in power and eventually the fleet sails away. What worries me is that one way or another, the United States might achieve its objective of toppling Maduro without a plan for the day after, because the opposition clearly doesn't have control of the military, doesn't have its own armed forces, has no way of maintaining internal orders. It's a country with a large number of very well-armed non-state groups in different parts of the country with a stake in the status quo. The military might split. You might even see civil war.
Are you saying that Donald Trump may have set off a chain of events that could make life worse for ordinary people in Venezuela?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think if you try to think of an optimistic scenario, the best case outcome of all of this, it's a very narrow path to that. It would require significant and probably quite lengthy negotiations with the armed forces themselves, because without the armed forces, you can't, as I say, guarantee internal security after any form of regime change. But I think the more likely scenarios are, Maduro stays in power with a political victory, if you like, his Bay of Pigs moment, when he can say, I stood up to the United States and the fleet sailed away, which is obviously worse for the population, or the government is toppled and we have possibly a protracted low-intensity war.
Do you think then that Donald Trump is naive about what he can achieve there, or he never really intended to do that much anyway, and it's just a show of might?
When Trump came back to power for his second term at the beginning of this year, he started out with a very much more pragmatic transactional approach, doing deals with Maduro. I think that's Trump's instinct. I think he was pulled into this by people who want to blow things up, who want to go after the drug cartels with rockets and even cruise missiles, and those like Secretary of State Marco Rubio who want to see regime change in Venezuela. But this is a very unstable equilibrium. And I suspect that at the end of the day, Trump will swing back to where he was at the beginning, that the best thing to do is a deal with Maduro.
Phil Gunson, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.